I'm Sanya. I am the host of Truth of Light. This is a live channeling podcast. The group of light beings that I channel, called the Ascended Masters, asked me to start this podcast so that they can transmit messages about the earth. We talk about Ascension and how spiritual space and spirituality is starting to be co-opted and weaponized. Really interesting conversation, and I hope that you enjoy. I'd love it if you would subscribe to this channel and join us for the whole journey. I'm here with all of the Ascended Masters. They surround me, and one will step forward and deliver a particular message. And today that master is Serapis Bey. If I am speaking, when I am speaking like this anyway, I'm not even channeling. If I speak in a slightly pausey way, or if you see me looking off to the side, that's because I receive information in a multisensory fashion. It takes me a little bit of time to assimilate, and then I'm able to transmit the complete picture. Serapis would like to talk about the term Ascension. He's saying that from the master's perspective, the term itself is very unhelpful. And part of the reason for that is that it doesn't exist per se in one human lifetime. And so the idea that someone has ascended but is still incarnated, or that someone's in the middle of their ascension, he's saying it's like a shorthand or a colloquialism for just a growing awareness or consciousness. No one can ascend in a lifetime. Ascension overall is the soul's path across many, many, many lifetimes. In fact, all of the lifetimes, if you like, incarnated lifetimes. Once somebody has actually ascended, they won't be incarnated anymore. Saying Ascension has been hijacked by the spiritual ego, which the masters are seeing is growing here. It's growing on Earth as part of this overall imbalance. So this podcast calls it the dark or darkness or fear, to keep it simple. And it's critical that darkness or fear that I've talked about being very, very contagious, it'll weaponize anything, and it's critical that it's co-opting the kind of sphere, if you like, of the light, which would usually be spirituality. So he's saying, so now you have all of these really big spiritual egos, and they're like hoarding and taking spirituality for themselves. He's saying many of them aren't even particularly spiritual. There's like he's calling it unconscious spirituality. Unconscious spirituality is a way in which people who are actually very stuck in the 3D world are co-opting spiritual jargon or almost spiritual practices, but there's no meaning because there's no underlying actual connection to source. He's talking about how connection to source has a particular life force underneath it, but so does connection to darkness. When I say darkness, I don't mean the evil thing. It's just an imbalanced state where the being or the person or the frequency or the energy is no longer facing the light in the light. In that if you like, consciousness, it's an altered state of consciousness. Part of the reason why the spiritual ego is creating a problem is because it is creating a separation. And there is no separation. Ascension isn't just what happens to one person. Every single soul is going along the same path. If you follow me, you'll have heard this. If you work with me, you'll have heard this, that in order to make the pieces fit together, everyone around you is on a different part of the path, because everybody fits like a jigsaw puzzle together. All the pieces look dissimilar. And that's partially why everyone feels so separated, because you look around you and you just see so much difference. It feels like nobody is where you are. If you do find people who are where you are, we tend to call them friends. And it's true to say that, just to interrupt myself, it's true to say that some people do incarnate in a more resting fashion. Some people do incarnate with more to, they've sort of given themselves more to do in this lifetime. Some people incarnate with members of the family who have come to help them, and some people incarnate with a family that appears to be completely unhelpful because they are challenging and it is a very tense beginning to their life. And so we feel great separation as it is. And the importance of everybody understanding that we're all spiritual beings. We are all on the same path. It just appears to be different because whenever you incarnate, you'll be seeing it through a different perspective. That's very important to the masters to get across to everyone. Everyone is on the same path. It just looks different. Just as if you were walking with a friend and you were standing here and they were standing there and you were both looking at a sunset, you would materially see a slightly different perspective. It is unhelpful for collective consciousness, bearing in mind that this is a time of sort of accelerated consciousness. It's accelerated partially because the masters have deemed it necessary due to this imbalance of light and dark. I call it the cosmic battle of light and dark because it's not just happening here on Earth. There's a sort of involuntary acceleration of consciousness. And as more and more beings incarnate, as more and more souls incarnate, as more and more work is done, it's natural that consciousness would be expanding along with everything else, including the universe. So I have spoken on IG, for example, about and on Threads, about the coming, or the not coming 5D frequencies. They're here and they're being integrated and assimilated. The 5D frequencies were part of the tactical strategy, if you like, of the Ascended Masters to accelerate consciousness, right? You bring in that frequency and you allow it to integrate with 3D, and you start to move people forward simply by allowing that to be accessible, by allowing that to integrate into what's otherwise a very dense and slow-moving state. A state that is polarized. It has to be, right? There's like yes and no, or there's light and dark, there's conscious and unconscious. There's sort of extremes. 5D is the first place in which really the ego is shed. There is a fourth dimension where ego is still there, but with awareness. It's like a bridging dimension. And the 5D frequencies have come in to help to accelerate the consciousness. And so spirituality is becoming part of the everyday. That was the plan, let's say, and we can see that happen. What was not the plan, if you like, is that the imbalance of light and dark is not only tipping more towards the dark. I spoke about that in my first couple of episodes about how we can see the contagion of fear. But also, whilst it's not surprising, it obviously wasn't the plan that darkness would then be co-opting and weaponizing the very thing that people, that the masters and other cosmic light beings and world teachers would like us to use as our true north, as our path forward, which is the path to consciousness. Therapist is saying, so it's not that everything is lost. Truth prevails, light prevails. It's how long it takes to do that. How much we want to swing back into the depths of unconsciousness under the guise of spirituality, for people to be weaponizing the idea of spirituality and co-opting it. That's a form of control. That's the outcome that they're looking for. It'll be the kind of people who call themselves a guru. I would just like to add that I am very well aware that I'm sitting here saying that I channel the Ascended Masters, giving you information about how people might be calling themselves a guru. They've asked me to be their messenger. I call myself a messenger of the Ascended Masters. Sometimes I call myself the messenger of the Ascended Masters. I get the irony. And he's saying, phew. He's saying that there are people who are here to be messengers. There are visionaries here. It's not that that function doesn't exist. There are people here who, like me, are here to be guides or even leaders, helping either broadcast and transmit messages, or as I do with one-to-one clients, helping people actually free themselves from the unconscious struggles that they're having, the unconscious barriers that they have come here to experience, but that were never meant to be insurmountable. And so it's not as though anyone who claims to have a spiritual connection, necessarily has a huge spiritual ego. He's not denigrating the entire spiritual community, or he's not sort of trying to call the entire spiritual community false. It's more a question of false light and being aware of the possibility that that's happening. Because the people who are doing that are ironically so unconscious that they don't see, maybe they don't care about the harm that could be done when people who are on the path of consciousness, which is something that's a very vulnerable path to be on, it is a very vulnerable path to be on. I know this because I've been on it for a long time. And I work with people who are there. Even if they don't realize it's a spiritual path, I work with people who are making conscious their own limitations, their own reasons for incarnating. And just as an aside, what's fascinating about that is that when people are ready to start moving out of that, they are already aligning with the path to consciousness. They are already aligning with wanting to be in relationship with their true selves, who they're really here to be, their soul self, their higher self, whatever it is you'd like to call it. And in that vulnerable state, people are often looking for answers. You're mid-swing. You're sort of letting go of one branch and you're trying to grab hold of another. You're in between frequencies, or you're not actually technically in between frequencies. You are becoming aware that there's something that isn't working in your life, and that happens to be the frequency that you are operating from, or the frequencies that you're operating from. But even in that, your awareness is now in between states. There's a realization that there's a possibility for something else. That is a vulnerable state. As all transformation, as all revelation can be. And by vulnerable, it doesn't mean that you are weak. Vulnerability is extremely powerful. That state is a very empowered, creative, powerful state to be in. That people are actively looking for answers naturally takes them into the path of people who feel that they're giving the answers. And the masters are asking for discernment. Someone saying that they're of love and light doesn't mean that they're of love and light. They may be well-meaning people who will be really sincerely trying to help from their own place of consciousness and using light language, spiritual language, in order to get that across. And there may be those who are very aware that they have their own ulterior motives. They may know that they are full of shit, frankly, without being aware that they are actually in the surface of dark, that they are unconscious, sometimes more unconscious than the people that they claim to lead or the people that they claim to help. They won't necessarily see it as being manipulated by fear. And Serapis is repeatedly saying discernment. Discernment is of the essence. One of the most important parts of discernment is really intuition. So we think of discernment as being quite an intellectual thing, or to do with critical thinking or intelligence, where the vast majority of discernment is really about intuition. And it's okay if you're sort of finding your way through and bump up against an experience that is more unconscious than you had hoped because you'd gone to that person as a guide. He's saying, don't let it dishearten you. The sort of, he's calling them true light bearers. They are here. There are people that you can follow, that can guide you. The masters would never be attempting something so daring, if you like, without putting the right people in place. And so what he's hoping is that this message allows you to become more aware of the dynamics at play so that you start to trust your own intuition and learn to use that. And I just want to repeat, if that intuition leads you to a place that is unexpected, that's okay. That's part of the learning process. Part of where intuition is clearest and truest is always in the present moment. And in fact, during my work towards consciousness, one of the more profoundly intense parts of my life, where I happen to be working with therapists, he actually did allow me and helped me to discover how to remove the past completely and remove the future completely and be fully in the present. And there are many, many ways that you can do that. I'll be talking about some of that, I'm sure, in other episodes, or follow me on IG threads, or reach out and work with me. Anything that brings you into presence will relieve you of the past, which are versions of you that literally no longer exist. It's an illusion, they're illusory. And it will begin to relieve you of the future, where you are projecting yourself, often not even from the present, but actually from the past. So you're projecting versions of yourself that needn't be. None of that is presence. The parts of you that don't exist and the future you that also doesn't exist except for as a projection, when you're deeply connected with those, it almost becomes a continuum, and present you doesn't have the space to be. This is where intuition is. He's saying that as everybody is like scrabbling into place, and people, it's almost like a land grab right now with spirituality in the domain of spirituality. Discernment right now, that is critical. And so it's a way in which you can support yourself by moving into discernment through your intuition, by using present moment to allow yourself to hear your intuition. I'm aware we went backwards, but you can see the trajectory forwards. And that's it for this episode. I want to thank the Ascended Masters, and especially Sarah Pisbay, for a really enlightening message. I'd love to know what you guys think of Ascension, if anyone feels that they've been through what was formerly known as Ascension, how you feel about the idea of spirituality being weaponized. I look forward to reading your comments below.